Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Upgrades. I'm Jeremy Noell.
And I'm Jonathan Suarez.
And in this episode, we're going to talk about the Symbiotic Swarm deck, but switched up this time to have Tayam, Luminous, Enigma as the commander. So this deck is the Abzan deck, so it's white, black, green. And Tayam, Luminous, Enigma is a 3/3 Nightmare Beast that says each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional vigilance counter on it. Pay 3, remove 3 counters from among creatures you control, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, then return a permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this one's got some pretty interesting things here because of the fact that it always has vigilance counters on all the other creatures you put into play, and you can grab any permanent with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So there's some really cool things you can do with this one. I'm pretty excited to see where this one can go.
I'm excited that you don't have to, play a bunch of giant creatures with different keywords this time, right? Like with this one, you don't care about which counters they are. You just care that they're counters.
Exactly. Yeah, this one's taken Cathril out, and Cathril cared about the keywords, but it didn't necessarily care about the keyword as counters. It just cared about those keywords. So there are cards like the Odric and Majestic Monarch and all those that are in the deck that we can probably take out as part of this. So for this one, we're doing things a little bit different. Instead of John and I each having a list of 10 different cards we would put in, we came up together with a list of each of these decks is going to have about 10, 13, 15 cards. We just kind of went through and found some cards we liked. And then we've also got some suggestions for some cards to take out for this. We're also trying to keep things budget friendly, so each of them is going to try and be around 50-ish, but a couple of them got a little out of hand.
Yeah,
so.
Some of us got a little out of hand with some things, but
Yeah, forgot about the cost of some cards, or just had a memory of them being much cheaper than they actually are now, too.
That is definitely an issue.
Yeah, So for this one, the first one that we're going to talk about, we actually have 2 cards that if you watched the Cathril Aspect Warper deck or upgrades episode, there are 2 cards that we decided that are definitely ones that you want to put in this deck again. And those are Eerie Ultimatum and the Ozolith, both brand new cards from Ikoria. So Eerie Ultimatum, pretty obvious, real powerful effect. I think if you're running Abzan and Commander, you really just you want to run this card.
I believe so. It's too powerful not to play.
Yeah, it's just bringing back any number of permanents straight onto the battlefield. It's going to be one of those things where it's going to be in like a majority of Abzan decks until something can come to replace it. Or people are just going to get annoyed and be like, I don't really, the mana and blah, 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 and not want to play it anymore. But there's definitely going to be ones that it's not going to be like a run it in every single one. But
yeah. The sorcery and instant Abzan decks definitely don't want it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But almost all the Abzan decks are just, their value type of they're green-based decks, right? So
yeah.
Permanents. Yeah. Big permanents normally, which means bringing those back is great.
Yep. And then the Ozolith, obviously another really great one from Ikoria. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put them on the Ozolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if it has counters on it, you may move them from the Ozolith to target creature. Really good. It does hurt a little because you do have to put all of the counters onto the one creature.
That's true.
But that's kind of what we want. We want a bunch of counters on creature or creatures. For Tayam to be able to use the activated ability of remove 3 from among any creatures you control to grab something back.
That's right.
So in addition to that, the next one that we've got here, I think is pretty interesting. Cauldron Haze. So this is an instant for 1 and a hybrid white-black. Choose any number of target creatures. Each of those creatures gain Persist until end of turn. And Persist is when it's put into a graveyard from play if it had no -1/-1 counters on it. Return it to play with a -1/-1 counter.
Yeah.
Pretty
and for this deck, you don't care that it's a -1/-1 counter. You really just care that it's a counter.
It's a counter.
Tayam will take it off for you.
Yep.
Which is pretty sweet.
With it being instant speed, you can do it in response to wrath effects or just about anything like that. You can sacrifice a bunch of stuff if you've got a sack outlet, bring them all back, activate Tayam's ability. So
Maybe you need a big combat and you're just blocking a bunch of stuff, or they're trying to kill all your things in combat.
Yeah.
Just make them come back.
Yeah. So why don't you pick the next card here?
Yeah, all right. So the next one we're going to go with is Contagion Clasp. This is one of my favorite cards. I'm a big fan of Scars and Mirrored, and I'm a big fan of it in Limited. It was great. So Contagion Clasp, 2-mana artifact. When it comes into play, put a -1/-1 counter on a creature. Now, normally, you put that on your opponent's creatures. Because it also has pay 4, tap it, proliferate, and then you can, make that -1 counter, make another one, and then another one. But in this deck, you probably want to put it on your own cards. Because Tayam's just going to take it away. Yeah. Maybe you just want to put the -1/-1 counter on their creature and then just use the proliferate ability from Contagion Clasp to give yourself additional counters.
Yeah, and one of the sweet things about this is that it does say choose any number of permanents and or players with counters on them.
Yes.
Give each another a counter of that kind already there.
Yep.
And now that we have things like with Tayam having vigilance counters, you can actually double up on those. It doesn't do anything for the creature to have double vigilance, but with 2 of the vigilant counters on there, it still stacks. You still have a second vigilance counter on there. Yep. So you can just remove one of those from one of the creatures or several of the creatures. They still have vigilance, and you get to activate the ability. So there's definitely a couple of different proliferate things that you'll want to check out. This one and Karn's Bastion were 2 that we kind of bounced around. Those
are both great.
Both great options.
Great colorless ways of proliferating, which is awesome.
Yep. The next one is another one that cares a little bit about counters, but again, as I was talking about before, with like Cauldron Haze, you want sack outlets. Carrion Feeder is a really good sack outlet. Yeah. It's a 1-mana zombie, 1/1, can't block, but sack a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Carrion Feeder. So if you Cauldron Haze, targeting all your creatures, sack them all to Carrion Feeder, they all come back with the counters. Mm-hmm. Now you've got that many counters on Carrion Feeder, plus all those -1/-1 counters on all your creatures. All your other creatures. So really good. Like, you usually want a sack outlet in anything that's going to be involving the graveyard anyway, and this is just a really good option for that sort of thing.
It's one of the best.
Yeah,
it's one of the best for sure. I'm going to jump down our list that we currently have. I'm going to jump down to Good Fortune Unicorn, because this was one of the cards you had picked.
Yep.
And I was not familiar with it. Modern Horizons 1 was not a format that I got to draft a lot of, but yeah. Good Fortune Unicorn is a 3-mana, 1 green/white 2/2, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield in your control, it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially that's the exact type of card that we want in this deck, to just give all of our creatures +1/+1 counters, regardless if they're going into combat or not. Just being able to make sure we can activate Tame when we need to.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, really that one's really good. Yeah, just an uncommon for Modern Horizons, so it's one of those you can definitely just overlook. You might not have played the format or researched it enough to know what's up with that. So
it's not like it was a constructed staple or anything.
Yeah, exactly. The next one is one that I think will work very well as an annoyance and also to help you out, and that is Aura of Silence. This is an enchantment for 1 white/white. I know John really loves this card.
I love Aura of Silence. So good.
So artifact and enchantment spells your opponent's cast costs 2 more to cast, and sacrifice it, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And the good thing about this is, because Tayam actually does say a CMC permanent, or CMC 3 or less permanent, you can actually recur this multiple times. So if you want to sack it at the end of somebody else's turn, and then activate Tayam's ability to get it back, and or if they have like multiple artifacts or enchantments out that you're just like, these are no bueno, I want to just get rid of these right now, and you could pay another 3, get it back, blow it up on a second one, pretty easily there. So
yeah, it's pretty insane how often that card just wrecks people, just not being able to play their Smothering Tithe on 4 mana or whatever it is. There's just it stops so many cards. Yeah,
if you can plunk it down before a person in blue gets to play their Rhystic Study on their turn 3, or stopping a Smothering Tithe, stopping Mirari's Wake, just any of those like 4 and 5 enchantments and artifacts. Just, automatically forces them to wait a couple more turns. It really slows down their progress there. So,
even things like the isn't it Nick Bloom Ancient? Nick Bloom Ancient. It's an enchantment creature.
So
it costs more as well.
Costs 7 normally, so making it cost 9.
Like, buys you a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure.
Very sweet card. So the next card I have is also a very Jeremy card. Is Avenger of Zendikar. 5 colorless green, 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, you get a 0/1 green plant creature token for every land that you control. And then the landfall ability is where it gets really obnoxious, and it gives each creature +1/+1 counter. Or every plant a +1/+1 counter.
All the plants.
Every time you landfall.
Yep.
+1/+1 counters. That is a lot of +1/+1 counters to remove for Tayam.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted this card in here. It's like, it's already kind of a pretty big staple in green. Anything that's going to try and ramp and make a big creature, it just has that value. And the landfall ability just keeps making those counters. And if you're at 7 or 8 or 9 lands already in play, and you get those 7, 8, or 9 tokens, and you play more lands, you've got 7 or 8 or 9 more counters that you can just pull off. Obviously, the plants will just become smaller again, but you might not care. You might just be like, yeah, I'm just going to use these as chump blocks later, but now I've got like 2 on this one, 3 on that one, however many, So
it's just a recurable source of counters. Mm-hmm. Every land gives you X counters for the plants. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, and then another recurable source of counters, and also helps to kind of pitch things into your graveyard, is Lotleth Troll. This is one that is a black and a green 2/1 zombie troll with trample, and it has discard a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Lotleth Troll, and a black can regenerate it. So again, just another way to get some of these CMC 3 or less things into your graveyard, and then being able to recur them, and then also generating those counters that we want.
Yeah, Lotleth Troll is really sweet because you can, like, it's a pretty niche corner scenario, but like pitching a creature that costs 3 or less to be able to remove 3 counters from you. Like, you can even get around counter spells by just dumping it into your graveyard and then have Tayam bring it back, which is pretty sweet.
Exactly. Yeah, if you have something that's like, players, if you have like a void winnower type thing out where it's like, player, you can't do X, it allows you to pitch and then bring it back. So
yeah, it's sweet.
Yeah, so sweet little thing.
All right, next card we have up is another Counters Matter card, Scoop Mob. 1 green, 1/1, very innocent looking creature, nothing to see there. But at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 5 or more lands, you get to put 4 +1/+1 counters on Scoop Mob. That's an entire activation for Tayam. Immediately. Pretty good. Scoop Mob is a fantastic card in Commander just because by the time you end up seeing it, the next turn it's almost immediately a 5/5. So
yeah, 5/5. Only costs 1, so you can get it back with Tayam pretty easily to continue fueling Tayam. So yeah, it's got card. A lot of value to it.
I agree.
The next one is one that I really liked in this deck a lot, and that's Sword of Truth and Justice. I know that some of the newer swords haven't gotten as much love as a lot of the older ones. A lot of the older ones obviously are a little bit more powerful. Yeah. This one is 3 mana. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, has protection from white and blue. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, then proliferate. So we're already wanting to put counters on stuff. We already have the +1/+1 sub theme. And then again, another source of proliferate is just really great, as we talked about with Contagion Clasp. So gets that protection, gets around, a couple of creatures here and there and spells here and there. So I think it's a pretty solid add.
I agree. I like proliferating. I like being able to have protection from white and blue. Nothing wrong with that. Being able to, there's almost certainly going to be a blue player at your table. And someone is probably foolish enough, like myself, to play white. So, you'll have protection from them too.
Exactly.
All right. Let's see.
Do you want to go over the last one?
Yes.
That's very much a you card.
I will take the last one. Correct.
All right. So the next one is going to be Whining Constrictor. And this is another smallish creature. So it's a 2/3 for a black and a green. Again, under that 3 CMC. If 1 or more counters would be placed on an artifact or creature you control, that many of those +1 are placed on that permanent instead. And if you would get 1 or more counters, you get that many of those counters +1 instead. So this was supposed to be kind of a negative, like, you're going to take some extra infect counters, poison counters on yourself, but a lot of your stuff's going to get bonuses. And then also had like the energy and stuff like that. We're supposed to help out with that quite a bit. But the being able to get 1 extra of those counters, because it doesn't specify again like +1/+1s, and now that we have keyword counters, really helps out with that. Just even having Tayam in play and then having Whining Constrictor just automatically, all right, I cast my Carnion Feeder, I cast my Scoop Mob, now it has 2 vigilance counters on it plus all that. So So it's just another source of extra counters for you to be able to activate that again and again.
Yep. All right, and the last card, like you mentioned, is very me card. I put this in, I believe it was the Sultai deck that we covered in the last upgrade video.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
But Abzan can also play it, and that is Pernicious Deed. Colorless black and green enchantment, so it has that perfect mana cost of 3 or less for Tayam. You can pay X, sacrifice Pernicious Deed, destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. This is... They've made a lot of really good sweeper type cards since this card's been printed in Apocalypse, but this one is still like my favorite. This is everything Pernicious Deed can do is just so obnoxious when you want it to be on. You can play it however you want. You can blow up little things when you have big things. You can just clear the whole board if you want to. It really goes well with Planeswalkers because it was so old that it didn't hit Planeswalkers, which was nice. So if you have some Planeswalkers you want to put in this deck that make tokens. A Johnny, for instance, or anything like that. Garrett can make tokens.
Yep.
It'll play very well with that.
Yeah.
But this is just your catch-all. Anything in play that's not a Planeswalker, I can deal with it.
Yep. Yeah, it's really good. And again, 3 CMC can recur it over and over again if you need to blow up the world several times. Yeah, no, it's a very solid card.
My kind of magic.
Yeah, those are our suggestions for the upgrades to the deck. So we're going to go through just a couple of some of the cards that we would suggest to take out specifically for Tayam. So one of the things I think that both of us are in agreement with is Bonder's Ornament seems a little weak as a card overall. It's not necessarily the worst thing because paying 4 mana to just be able to draw a card is not the worst thing in the world. But again, you could definitely be doing a little bit more. So that's one that we're probably going to take out of almost all of these decks.
Yeah, because it depends on the other Bonder's Ornaments, right?
Yeah, it really does.
So if no one else is playing it, it's kind of lackluster.
Yeah. So there's that. Selective Adaptation was one we kind of talked about a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, as we talked about at the beginning, some of the stuff that's more focused on the keyword soup elements of things for the Cathril aspect warper. So things like Audric and Achroma Angel of Wrath is just really big, but has a lot of keywords on it. Zatalpa also costs a lot, but has a lot of keywords on it. So you can generally take those ones out. Like, you may want to keep those in, because if you're still running the Cathril in the deck as part of the 99, you can definitely get those out. But if you're really focusing on those 3 CMC or less things, these ones are definitely considerations for immediate cuts. So all right.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that one's good. Thank you all for coming out. Make sure to let us know what cards you would add to the deck in the comments, and then make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we will be having more of these coming out a little bit later. Thank you all for watching. I'm Jeremy Noell for John Suarez.